Hello, Gaze and Phone. I am Nia, also known as @VitNia, and this is part 2 in my series investigating the allegations of embezzlement, financial mismanagement, and general queer chaos against and amidst an organization known as T-Boy Wrestling.
T-Boy Wrestling.
T-Boy Wrestling.
Founded and co-directed by Meech Miller and Adam Androwski. In part 1, I introduced the event, the key players, and the key allegations.
How was it organized?
It wasn't.
It wasn't?
It wasn't organized.
And the next thing I remember is my leg just snapping.
I don't know specific numbers, but I do know that it was not enough to cover operations. Ever.
Notably highlighting perspectives from volunteer wrestlers and participants in the Bay Area, New York City, and Portland, respectively, as well as an interview with Zane, host of Let's Get Physical, a comparable queer wrestling event, to set a standard for how these events can function efficiently and ethically.
What do you think should be done? We should be making amends. How should a situation like this be handled in general?
Payment should be number one.
An effort was made to reach out to Meech and Adam, respectively, with no reply, but regardless, I was also aware, while making part 1, that a key part of the story was missing. So, go check out part 1 if you haven't already, because boy, oh boys, do we have some developments. The decision to make this 2 parts was not simply a torture tactic directed at you personally, I promise. In December, I put out an open forum for comment that I know made its way around T-Boy Wrestling circles. And from those who did respond, I was informed that there were requests from within the T-Boy Wrestling community to keep things hush-hush, as in, don't speak to media outlets of any size. And while I was flattered to be considered a media outlet as opposed to my official professional title, deeply nosy but with praxis, it also gave me insight into how the people closest to the story were feeling. I knew once part 1 dropped, there was a chance some people may feel more comfortable coming forward and sharing about their experience, and that some did. So while we have hundreds of people across the country who were affected as attendees, onlookers, and volunteer wrestlers, I didn't have much context on what the inner workings look like. The central organizing team, the coaches, the people who were legitimately hired, promised payment, and not paid, as well as the people who pushed for this, the people who believed in this and invested in this from the beginning. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, the quiet missteps, and multi-tiered ways the consequences of Meech's actions reverberated throughout this tight-knit community, let me tell you how this shit ended. Hi gay! A brief pause from the video for a special shout out from our sponsor, Bellesa. You guys know Bellesa by now. They are the #1 brand for all things sexual wellness, and this new drop is no exception. Meet the Whisper Collection, the world's first ever silent vibrators. Their new Whisper tech means you never have to choose between discretion and power. Exhibit A, the Whisper Bullet. Compact and discreet, but also, do you hear that? Exactly. But wait, there's more, because they have 4 styles. The Whisper Rabbit, the Whisper Vibe, and the Whisper Wand. They got deep and rumbly vibrations, they got precise center stimulation, and they're super soft, luxurious, and effective. And as a plus, my friends at Bellesa and I are sending out free vibrators to everyone who signs up for my giveaway. And when you sign up, you'll get a free Rose Toy or Whisper Vibe with the purchase of any Whisper line product. So yeah, it's time to prioritize your pleasure without waking up the whole house. So check it out, click the link in my description, and thank me later, because I know some of y'all needed to hear this. But you won't hear this. So a little bit after Adam made his statement on the Trans Dudes of LA page, announcing Meech's mismanagement of funds, as well as alleging that a T-Boy Wrestling LLC had never been created, as he was led to believe by Meech, Meech took to his personal Instagram page, which has since been deleted, to make this statement. I am deeply saddened to share that my time with TDLA and T-Boy Wrestling has come to an end. Over the past months, I have made a number of poor decisions, both personal and financial, that have caused harm to others and to the community I care about. I take full responsibility for the ways my actions have impacted people's trust, finances, and emotional well-being. I am truly sorry to everyone who has been hurt or let down by me. I took on far more than I was capable of managing and allowed my own judgment, ego, and wishful thinking to override communication, boundaries, and responsibility. The debt I accumulated while trying to produce this ambitious project independently has affected not only me, but others who were counting on me to follow through with integrity. I recognize that apologies alone are not enough, and I'm committed to making amends through concrete action and accountability. I'm grateful that Adam and Austin of Trans Guy Supply, a talented trans creator, will be stepping in to guide the project's next chapter while I take responsibility for fulfilling all remaining financial obligations. I have complete faith that the community will continue to thrive under their leadership, but I am also here to assist in the process however and whenever asked. I will also be stepping away to focus on my mental health and personal growth. I am engaging in therapy, Debtors Anonymous, and other recovery and accountability spaces to better understand the roots of my behavior, learn from these mistakes, and rebuild myself as a more trustworthy and self-aware person and artist. So, yes, King, give us nothing. No steps for retribution, minimal meaningful accountability, and next steps are essentially, my fault, y'all, I'm going to therapy, y'all be easy. And also no acknowledgement about where the money is. The second slide of Adam's statement addressing the issue read, I will continue my work with T-Boy Wrestling along with the trusted, talented, and dedicated team members, and we are committed to sustainable collaboration and growth in our next phase. I'm proud to share that T-Boy Wrestling has found a new home with Trans Guy Supply, where it will continue under new leadership and structure as a TGS-produced event. This transition will ensure that T-Boy Wrestling can thrive long-term with and for the community. I appreciate the grace and patience you've shown during what has been an incredibly challenging and emotional time for everyone involved. This statement has since been taken down for unknown reasons. Trans Guy Supply, which was announced to be taking over operations for T-Boy Wrestling, posted this statement following Adams as a joint post with T-Boy Wrestling. Quote, what has recently come to light about the mismanagement, coercion, and harm surrounding the events produced by TDLA has shaken all of us. It's hard to find the words for the grief and disappointment so many of us are feeling right now. The scope of mistreatment, harm, and the amount of money owed to members of our community, especially to trans people of color, non-binary folks, younger folks, and trans women, is extensive and devastating. The process of uncovering the depth and full scope of this harm is ongoing. The responsible individual has been removed, and a group of community members who worked on and were directly impacted by these events are actively engaged in organizing the accounting and processes of accountability and repair. This thoughtful effort involves many people, careful documentation, and various legal and restorative steps. This has also since been taken down. At this point, TDLA has been officially disbanded, as in will no longer be producing events. But while Instagram story posts on now deleted Instagram accounts are all good and fun in accountability world, after reading all of this, I was left wondering, how did this actually go down?
My name is Salem. I'm 28 years old, and I got involved with T-Boy Wrestling in Oakland, in the Bay Area. I was hoping, like, they saw my vlog, and they, like, both Mish and Adam, like, both told me that they really appreciated me making content and helping to boost it. And they kind of, like, again, like, breadcrumbs, like, oh, maybe we'll bring you onto the team as, like, our social media person. But like there was no conversations. For that was like there was no contract. It was just me texting me being like, I'll pay you $150. And that unfortunately was over Instagram. So when he deleted his Instagram, all that evidence was gone. I never got a screenshot of it. And there's people that have told me like, yeah, like I knew him for like 3 years and he ran like his print shop the same way. And was always like very flaky and very much like, oh yeah, I'll pay you this like right away, or I'll pay you, or I'll get to you, and then just ghost. And that was like his kind of MO that I started to realize, especially in Portland. You know, everything was just radio silent for like a week. And then I got a call from our performance coach. They had been reaching out to people to find out how much money was owed. And as far as I know, like they, like all the like coaches and the people who were like helping to organize T-Boy Wrestling basically called a meeting and sat down with Mish and Adam and were like, you owe this much money actually to everybody. And apparently Adam just had no idea. As far as I recall, someone mentioned that or Mish would like use his age over like the age gap between him and Adam to be like, I'm older than you, I know what I'm doing, like I'll take care of it. We all just trusted Mish. And so when this was found out and this was brought to him, like Mish apparently just like cried and went to a different room and cried and then came back and like didn't apologize and just made a bunch of excuses. And I guess his plan was that he was just going to not pay anyone back, use the money that they did get to continue the tour that he, by the way, the 2026 tour, he announced that without running it by anybody. So none of the coaches, none of the team, none of the wrestlers knew that was going to happen. And Adam didn't know, I don't think. Yeah, so he just proceeded to make excuses and not seem remorseful at all. They were supposed to have like another kind of like follow-up meeting, but by then he so happened to be in New York and no one could get a hold of him. And he basically just ran away from the situation and made his like bullshit post. But clearly he just wants, he wanted people to like not be mad at him or think that he's like doing the work. But I think that obviously he didn't even believe in it enough to post it on like his actual page for people to see. It was just like a disappearing story in like 24 hours. And then he deleted his Instagram. So I was like, well, As far as I know, he stole the pre-sale tickets money from the 2026 tour. So that money is most likely with him. But as far as money that was owed, that was all people that he got loans from. So it's not like T-Boy Wrestling made this much money and he just went away with it. It's like he asked a bunch of people. When I was in Portland, I actually overheard him say something about this of like, I've called in every favor that I can from everybody to make this happen.
And is that 37K, do you think, enough to pay what's due back?
It is significantly more money than that total.
Wow. What's still owed for the past 10 shows?
Still owed between T-Boy Wrestling as well as like TDLA. I think the total number between TDLA and T-Boy Wrestling is somewhere closer to like
that's what they owe to like DJs, coaches, vendors, referees, like people that they're wow. Oh my God.
A gracious read of this looks like Meech wasn't upcharging to pocket and dupe. He was pulling from money that he never had in the first place. And it should be noted that a simple Instagram story could have avoided all of this. Taya and Tanae from part 1 both offered their labor for free just to be a part of this project. There is someone out there who could have done this. Thus, the real question for Meech is, why didn't you let someone?
Hi there, my name is Sherman. I also go by the artist name Boy Bowser. I'm 28, and I was a wrestler and a musician for a couple of T-Boy Wrestling's halftime shows. I wasn't part of the operations team, but I was friends with the operations team, and so like I think everyone was pretty much kept in the dark about everything up until like the news dropped, and it was like, whoa. I had already had my criticisms, at least of like niche, just due to like being a performer with them and not getting paid for things. Organizing T-Boy Wrestling was like Adam's full-time job, and that was because of Mish. So I think all of this happened was because of Mish really centralizing all of the control and making the other people around him dependent on him so as not to question that control. It's because I was like, this was someone who was stringing people along with promises of payment, with promises of community, you know, using his trans identity as a shield from criticism and using this to take advantage of people's time, labor, efforts, bodies. Like it was promises of payment, not being clear about everyone's roles in operations, you know, like constantly like asking so much of people and like putting people in like dangerous situations financially or like physically otherwise because he wanted control over everything himself. It just really seemed like Mish had like such a tight grip on all of the books, financials, like everything important with paperwork. And I think that was also partially because of like age difference. I know like Mish was like about like almost like 10 years older than Adam. So he was very much like, I got everything handled. I have my own business. I know how to run it. You know, like I will handle all of this if you can just handle like back end, making sure like the operations team is delegated, you know.
But to the question of where's the money, it seems the financial tomfoolery that was occurring throughout 2025 was a result of Meech borrowing money to stay above water and using any new profits to pay off old debts from previous events, only to then borrow more and essentially acclimate immense debt throughout T-Boy Wrestling's existence. And in the aftermath of this revelation, the guilty, or at the very least to be journalistically sound about it, the accused, basically dipped on everyone. And what's left is a collection of devastated, unpaid trans people who put time, sweat, and tears into this project. Atop that, though, it appears to me that a decision was made to keep the details of the events as they unfolded within the, quote, inner circle. A circle that unfortunately did not include event host and face of the brand.
I'm Marley Goddard. I am a comedian based in Brooklyn, New York. Heard of it? And I hosted several of the shows, New York, LA T4T show, Portland. Yeah. So I think 6 shows in all.
Damn.
Yeah. And the shows are like 8 hours long. So it would be like 16 hours a weekend.
Wow.
Hosting the shows in full heels, clampering around, lifting twinks up, throwing miles and miles.
Out of the arena.
No, literally. We're still missing one. I like You know in Pokemon where it's like rocket power blasts off and they like turn into the little star in the sky?
Oh, what an image.
That's kind of how strong I am.
Yes, because you're famously the strongest woman in the world.
I am the strongest woman in the world. First it was Western Mass, then it was New York, and now it's the whole entire world. And that's honestly how I got the gig in the first place.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, so I've done some other wrestling shows. Twinks versus Dolls, I famously won several years. And they had to write me out of the show because I don't know how to lose. And then I was also in this show called Chokehold, which is like this New Orleans-based queer drag wrestling show. And so this is like honestly my third or fourth show that's queer trans-centric that's inside a wrestling ring.
Wow.
And I feel like, yeah, there's this new almost like subversion Americana, WWE camo wearing, like second Trumpian era, like community wanting joy and to be seen and to create our own communities. And sometimes when that happens, there's corruption? I don't know. What is the word? Like, what are the words that people have been saying?
Exploitation, entitlement, bad vibes.
4 words. That's the name of the memoir.
That's the name of your memoir or of the T-Boy wrestling story?
Maybe both. Maybe
really
both.
Fair, really fair. So could you tell us how you got involved in the first place?
I DM'd them. I was like, I remember actually being on a podcast and seeing like the Trans Dudes of LA and T-Boy wrestling starting. And I am obsessed with being involved. Like, I'm like, if I don't see myself in something, I'm like, why am I not a part of that?
Absolutely.
Put me in that. I open the Zoom, both the guys are shirtless. And I'm like, business meeting. I'm like in another world. I would love to log on to a business meeting and have my clients or whatever be shirtless guys. And I think there were moments of like levity, but then when I remember, I was like, they were like, we can give you $750 for the show. And I was like, okay, like my day rate, you know, like I used to shoot for Cardi B and like it was like at least like $12.50 like a day. And I'm like, I get T-Boy wrestling is not Cardi B money, but I was like, this is, you know, so long. These shows are so long and I don't know what it is. So I was like, okay, like what about like $1,000? And to see if I would get the $1,000, Mish, the organizer, creator, took out a tech deck and said, if I can land this kickflip, we'll meet your rate.
Oh, wow. Did he land it?
I think he actually kind of didn't land it. And then he just like kind of landed it. And then he like made it so it landed.
Okay.
And I should have known. Basically, I'm still owed like almost $3,000 because also like the traveling shows, I was told that, and like part of my like invoice and contracting and like, this is, you know, what I do is when I travel for work, it's like, you got to pay to get me there and like pay for my dinner, like while I'm literally working. It's like, there's no break for dinner. It's like, I'm doing it while I'm hosting. I'm like, Mike, like it's ASMR for full crowd. They're getting so much from me.
Yeah.
An ASMR YouTube video, a live wrestling show.
And at times a medic, apparently.
Well, I am from, there's doctors in my family, so I do kind of think that I am a little bit of a doctor, but I'm also not. I'm also not because there were serious injuries in the show. I'm sure there might be more out there that I don't know about.
Mhm.
I've kind of tried to like tune everything out and just be like, get me my money, run me my check,
Yeah,
give it to me now.
absolutely.
And where is it?
Where do you think it is?
Where do I think it is? It's so interesting because Mish, the guy who I guess owes me money and a bunch of other people money and has maybe left people homeless and injured and a lot of other things, recently like reshared his location with me. So I'm like, I know exactly where he's at now, which I'm like, what I want to do is I want to fight him
Right.
and destroy him. But then I know that they would like that. You know what I mean?
You think they would like that?
Getting beat up by me? Yeah. I think that people would pay a lot of money for that. And then I'm like, I'm doing it for free?
See?
And you owe me money? Like,
Yeah,
no. But that would be a good live stream.
Yeah, for sure. I'd pay. Hey.
Yeah.
That's the fundraiser.
Right.
So what's your purview on Misha's like psychology? Like what is your relationship like?
I think Mish deeply cares about community and the space that he was trying to create, and at the same time was getting in way over his head. And I think in any small business that's trying to be created, you're gonna go under probably, you know, like you're gonna like be in the reds. And I think, but I also think there is maybe, there's a lot of things that like I wanna say, but I'm like I don't wanna be offensive. I don't know. There is like hormonally transitioning and your body is filled with testosterone. Sometimes there are certain things that just leave your mind because you don't have to think about it anymore. Misogyny. And then it's like, okay, you're passing now as like a white man in society, where I'm like, now I'm being exploited the same way as like this, like my other cis bosses have like exploited me. And so I didn't think that would actually happen.
Like the same system of abuse under capital would be repeated in a transcentric space by a trans person.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be like, this person does deeply care about the community. And it's like, how can I say that? And now so many of these people are left, you know, in the negatives and without support and without money and compensation. And the last time we texted, I was like, because I had mentioned, the last time we talked on the phone, I was like, hey, I literally said, I was like, I love you. And like, I know you want the best for everyone. And I know this all you were, you know, way in over your head. And I just want you to be so upfront and honest with me, because like, if you don't have the money, don't be like, it's gonna come tomorrow. Because I don't want that. Like, don't say that to me. Like, don't mess with me like that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, I have to pay back my landlords almost $10,000 and you owe me $5,000 and I need that by the end of this month.
Right.
And he was like, for sure, you're gonna get that. You're gonna get that. And you know, a week before I was like, just, hey, making sure that, you know, this is gonna be sent to me. Didn't hear anything. The day before the end of the month, I was like, what's good? He pays me $2,000 and said the rest, like the last payment will come tomorrow, which was like the first of the next month. Never came. Texted him a bunch of times. Ghosted. Hasn't.
You haven't heard from him since?
Haven't heard from him since.
So when did you find out you were most likely not getting paid and this was happening to a lot of other people?
Like, I got a call maybe a week or two after the Portland show from Adam and was like, so basically, like, we've had some emergency meetings and I just have to let you know, like, we can't work with Mish anymore. Like, everybody is done with him. Like, it's not happening anymore. like we're gonna continue the tour, but Trans Dudes of Supply is going to take it over and whatever. And I was like, oh, like, okay. Like I had heard none of this, and it was like all of these words were coming out, was like owing people money, grooming allegations, like so many different things where it was like, and that's the thing with queer and trans people is we love language. And we love using language and weaponizing language, where I was like, what is the truth? And it's so hard to talk about certain things when at the end of the day, I was like, I just need my check. Like, yo, I just gotta get my check. Like, and I wonder if money wasn't a factor, like what would be the feelings? But yeah, so I got that call and I was like, okay, 1, I had no idea that this was happening. 2, I didn't know people were feeling this way. 3, people are meeting without me. Like, I'm like, there are emergency meetings, like, about money. There was, like, an Excel spreadsheet with all the people he's owed money to. And I was on the sheet, and I was like, so we're having meetings. There's a bunch of, trans dudes of LA, trans masks, non-binary people meeting, and I'm not even involved. Nobody had told me about it. And I was pissed because I was like, listen, like there are a few trans women that were involved with this. Like, don't you? And I did so much. I tried my best and hardest to uplift my community and be there and run around in heels. And I fucking slayed. Anybody who went to those shows knows I absolutely ate down.
Period.
And yet I'm not in the conversation. And so that felt hard to fathom, where I was like, oh, I was so deeply in this community and now I feel so deeply on the outside.
Especially when it comes to your finances and your neck is on the line.
Right. And then it's like, oh, am I going to be a part of it in the future? And then I wanted the new owner, whatever, manager to come call me, but nobody really talked to me. Nobody was communicating with me. And there were other trans girls who had hosted an event for them or a judge, and they asked me what is going on? I still haven't gotten payment. My co-host was coming to me about trying to track down their payments. And I was like, girl, I don't know. I'm in the same boat. I literally have no idea. And so it felt like I was then trying to be this voice for all the trans women who were a part of it, who didn't have that communication or contact or community in the same way that maybe some of the wrestlers or other people had. And so I was kind of who should be taking accountability? And that's still my question.
Who do you think should?
It's well, obviously, Mish has not taken accountability, and that's who everybody blames. But there was a life of this organization before I came in. There were other relationships, there were other people, there were other dynamics. Obviously people had been feeling this way for a while about this person, and so.
Do you think someone could have rung a bell earlier?
Yeah, or we could have had more conversations. We had conversations about consent and pronouns before the match, but did we have conversations before, the day of the show about, how to address each other and how to operate? And it's difficult when, the job you have, meaning me, is to be half naked running around in a wrestling ring and, not this one, but Twinks versus Dolls rolling around in nacho cheese, rolling around in spaghetti, lifting somebody in front of a bunch of, it's this performance, burlesque, sex work, sport, a whole thing in one. And so it's very vulnerable. And especially when it's like your community, everyone feels very vulnerable. And I think, you know, everybody, I think, got super defensive and blamed this one person, which I think, you know, is totally valid. And I'm like, how can we all take accountability in our own way and like our own, like we all have agency and we all signed up to do this. And so how do we take accountability for either ways that we were not there for, you know, certain people, or I feel like I'm being vague, but
What do you mean?
I just like, it's so hard because I don't want to get it. It's like, yes, we can get into like trans medicalism and like bioessentialism and being like, but there are changes when you transition and you medically transition. Sometimes there are trans men, trans masks, whoever, where, yeah, what I said before is like, they don't show up for, you know, their trans sisters in the same way that like maybe they were vocal before about misogyny or trans misogyny. When it's like my survival and like my check and like my career, it's like, well, okay. Yeah, where it's like, okay, it directly impacted a lot of people. And I'm like, hi, also me. Like,
And you put a lot of hours, energy,
a lot of hours, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and my face. They used my face. They were using my face, my body. There were other people making edits of my face and my body. There were, you know, and in the shows too, like I was taking on a lot of like responsibilities that weren't necessarily, I would say, like a host responsibilities. It was supposed to be a space for people in the community to find joy and to express themselves. And so I think there was like a lot of excitement and nervousness. And I think, yeah, organizationally, that's what kept it going, was people's excitement for this space. And so there were a lot of people who just kind of like
turn a blind eye,
horse blinder on, like, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna go straight forward, and we're
not gonna make sure this is sustainable. We're gonna make sure that it's fun and it happens.
Right. It was a sprint. It was not a marathon. There were a lot of moments in all of my wrestling shows that I'm like, oh, this is nice to like have community. And at the end of the day, like, why was my pay cut at every single one of them? I'm like, why was I felt exploited after every single one of them? Why did I not feel communicated with? Why do I feel on the outside when I'm like the face of them?
Absolutely.
It's just not, what does Justin Bieber say? Clocking.
It's not clocking to me.
It's not clocking to me. Then in Portland, I went on local TV to promote my comedy show, which I was doing there. And then I like mentioned like that T-Boy wrestling was happening in Portland. And they were like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's a wrestling performance show where transgender men throw each other to the ground and kiss each other.
Right.
And that's what and then they laughed. And and I was like, yeah, I'm a comedian. Like there's something funny about saying transgender man making out on the wrestling mat. But then people were like, I don't feel safe. Like, you need to apologize. Like this, like I am non-binary. I am trans mask. I am gender mask, queer, whatever. People were like, I wasn't being expansive enough. And I was like,
in that quote on the show.
On the show.
Okay.
And was like, and people were like, why are you going on national news and blowing up our spot? And like people were like really angry at me and like needing me to like make a statement. I was like, one, I'm not an organizer of this event. Two, I'm like, girl, I was non-binary for a decade. I'm like literally a trans woman holding twinks on stage naked. I'm like, let's use our eyes here. Let us use our eyes, this, like, what are you talking about? And have you been to the show? It was actually the most inclusive thing ever. I am so sad because, like, you know, with Mish, like, we would talk about, like, I was like, it could have been so big. It could have been so, I'm like, I could have seen this on, like, ESPN, MTV. Like, the growth, like, was exponential. And you just took advantage of one too many people. I hope that this conversation doesn't scare people away from, like, shooting for the moon and, like, going big, because I'm such a lover of spectacle. Like, that is my whole brand, is like crazy big lights. And so, you know, shows like this, I hope it doesn't scare people from, like, trying to go big and following their heart and making art.
So a lot came up in my conversation with Marley, and I thank her endlessly for her vulnerability and openness. So it did come up in some of my interviews that there were tensions that arose and a line in the sand that appeared between trans men and trans women who were involved in the organizing of T-Boy wrestling that I think Marley speaks to very succinctly. When it comes to conversations around internalized biases in the queer community, as well as ways we as queer people can perpetuate harm that's been instilled in us by patriarchy, despite us also being rejected by patriarchy, it's complicated, but it is real. I've spoken on this in a lesbian context as it relates to lesbians and bisexual women in my The White Bisexual Problem video essay, but I think a lot of that ethos lives here as well. I'm not at liberty to say what is going down in Misha's head, in anyone's head, for that matter. But what I will say is masculinity is not inherently good or bad. Men are not inherently good or bad. Masculinity can be beautiful. Masculinity can be harmful, as is true for pretty much all things. I don't think that's a hot take. It's how culture has imbued these identities. It's how society has commodified them. Same with femininity and womanhood in many ways. The ability to perpetuate harm is universal. It really all comes down to ego, fear, and what people are willing to unlearn for the greater good. Much easier said than done. But nonetheless, absolutely fundamental when you're putting yourself in a position of power in an organizing space that's thesis is around uplifting a marginalized community. Even more so when there's money involved. I'll take this moment to again reiterate I'm not interested, and I don't think the thesis of this video is trans men do bad because men bad. None of us have done what Mish has done. But I think what Marley said about accountability can ring true in many facets of this story. The thesis is more so, where are your blind spots? We all have them. I have them. It's in what ways can or does your relationship with yourself obstruct you from the shared goals of your collective? In Misha's case, that seemed to be the through line I found in my interviews. But to address the question of how did this happen, where were the checks and balances, and how did this go on for so long, the complicated reality of how this community was financially exploited bleeds very clearly into how they were emotionally exploited as well.
So my name's Navar. Stage name is Anubis. I'm 23. He, they pronouns, and I was wrestling with T-Boy Wrestling for every show save for SF Oakland. I was pretty much along for the whole ride. It was kind of like an unwritten rule where if you got into any of like the shows, you had like returning rights for the next ones. That's why I kind of like stayed on for so long, was because, you know, I was able to just, you know, keep finding time to come back. And I also was getting reimbursed, which I found out later was a rarity.
So when did you find out about the allegations? When Adam posted?
I found out like a week before that, maybe. My partner called me and was like, it's like dollars, bro. And I was like, oh, I don't know exactly how accurate that figure is, but it was like, it was, I was completely blindsided by it. I did not, you know, because I wasn't, in my head, I was thinking like, you know, I'm just a wrestler. I'm not even in any of these like meetings and shit. And I'm like, you know, getting the prize money that I was owed. You know, I got my flight reimbursements. I got, you know, like hotel reimbursements and stuff like that. So I just figured that, you know, if they're taking care of me so well, obviously they're going to be taking care of the paid staff too.
Why do you think you were getting paid? Do you think there was a reason to prioritize you? Do you think it was a timing thing?
So I think that for my prize money, I think it was a timing thing, because for me, I got Mr. Congeniality or whatever for LA 2.0, right? And I honestly think that was just a timing thing. Like they just hadn't run out of money. As far as like, you know, why my flights and stuff were getting reimbursed, I think I mean, for one, like I'm still kind of trying to make sense of it because I'm not entirely ready to go into it, but I do think that Mish had an inappropriate liking towards me, and like that's kind of all I'll say. And then I'm not trying to brag or anything, but you know, I'm extremely athletic. I um you know, was capable of you know, bringing an exciting match, and I was also capable of wrestling multiple times. Like as far as all of like the wrestlers were concerned, everybody was like really obviously really distraught. I mean, I feel like there's this misconception that like a lot of people were like really acutely aware of like the mismanagement and such, and you know, from where I was standing, it definitely seemed like you know everybody was having you know not only their good faith used against them but having the wool pulled over their eyes, you know. um so it was definitely a little prickly and people were pointing fingers at each other in the very beginning. um but like at the end of it, I really feel like we were all just kind of trying to support each other because a lot of people are like we're just a bunch of like artists and athletes who were like you know, especially for those of us who had been around like for multiple shows, we were just like putting our heart and soul into something that we cared about. And you know, I know for me it was like um I was just enjoying having a place to be myself and make other queer people feel, you know, like they had a space that, you know, they could be their authentic selves. And, you know, I would have a lot of people come up to me after shows and, you know, say that I was like one of the first Black queer reps of like in like something athletic, like you know trans mass that they had ever seen, or like I had more than one person be like, I didn't even know Black people did that. I didn't even know we came in this font. And I was like, what?
To me, this all paints a picture of something incredibly human. A longing for community, a longing to belong, a longing to see yourself reflected, a desire to be celebrated for who you are. And listening to these interviews honestly made me so emotional because with a story like this, you hear the word embezzlement and then you Google that, and then you sit there like, damn, that's crazy. But in the wake of this cartoonishly irresponsible haywire incident sits a collection of trans artists, athletes, organizers, performers who worked really fucking hard to make something special because they really cared about it and believed in it. Which leaves the question, where do we go from here? What can emerge from the rubble? As I've mentioned a few times at this point, Trans Guy Supply, a former sponsor and collaborator with T-Boy Wrestling and TDLA, was announced to be taking over the brand in all future events. On the Eventbrite, it lists all upcoming events for 2026 as sold out. So I was able to get access to a private document released within T-Boy Wrestling circles that's essentially structured like a Q&A and addresses a lot of the missing context of the aftermath. It's my understanding it was written and circulated by some members of the inner organizing circle after Mish fled the state of California. The document states, quote, first off, no one on the team, including the coaching staff, referees, and the AV team, was told or clued in on before the 2026 tour dates were posted to Instagram. This was a decision made solely by Adam and Meech. Mitch took all the money from the 2026 shows. $37,000 was taken by Meech. Eventbrite may refund all tickets or pull the money from Meech's bank. This is unconfirmed, and we are still in contact to get updates. If you did buy a ticket, request a refund immediately. On Trans Guy Supply and Austin, quote, TGS had the financial means to take over T-Boy Wrestling and had hopes to continue it in a more sustainable way, but wanted to run it cooperatively more so than take it over completely. Took a misstep with the post and decided to pause, which may address why that post was removed from the Trans Guy Supply Instagram. As an aside, Mish was removed, as we know, and despite Adam's since deleted Instagram statement that said he'd continue to be a part of the T-Boy Wrestling organizing team, this document clarified that as of now, he's chosen to step down. Addressing participants' questions about if payment is possible, quote, we can add you to the spreadsheet of the million people Mish owes money to. The majority of us that are owed thousands have not seen full payment, if any. If you are owed money by Mish or T-Boy Wrestling and you have proof, text, invoice, etc., please contact us separately and we can add you to the spreadsheet. We cannot promise you will ever be able to repay us. To the question of will we regroup and create something similar, quote, no, we're tired, LOL. To the question of what options do those who have been financially impacted have to get some sort of restitution from Mish, quote, small claims, fundraisers, besides that there isn't much else. People have GoFundMes that they have posted, we will send a few that have been posted. To the question, where are Meech and Adam, quote, Meech, impossible to get a hold of, Adam, kind of laying low and trying to figure out ways to resolve the million issues. The document ends with therapeutic resources, ways to financially offer support within the community to those most affected and at risk, and connections to offer community elsewhere. And in their own words about what went wrong, quote, "We'd have to harass Meech more and more after every event, but he would eventually pay us, until he didn't, lol. And this unfortunately happened with everybody. He had exhausted all of his resources, in parentheses, community members he could borrow money from." As well as this question, quote, "At Cubbyhole, I asked Meech how the finances worked out for T-Boy Wrestling with flying people out, buying pizza for every practice, etc. And he straight up told me he has had to borrow money, / they've never made money at a show, / he's taken out lines of credit for this. He said it's because he wants to do this for the queer community. So I was surprised no one else knew, / people were completely shocked because he was somewhat transparent with me, who he hardly knows." To which the response was, quote, "He would share different information with different people. If he knew you were somebody that wouldn't be sharing this info with the rest of us, he was more open. We also had to trust that the organizers knew what they were doing. We did not feel the need to ask what their finances look like, as we all had our own jobs for the show."
Hi. Editing Nia here. So, update. Adam, famously the co-director of T-Boy Wrestling, has made a public statement. He's taken to his YouTube channel to post the first part, which is 51 minutes, of a 3-part series he plans to make, telling the story of T-Boy Wrestling from beginning to end.
He also wasn't treating me like I was half of the business when it came to finances. Like, I remember asking to see the money, asking for reports on the parties, asking for breakdowns of budgets every time we had an event. And he would never show me. He would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get those numbers together." Never would get them together. And then when I would insist on it or be like, "We need to have a bank account that I can see the money in, I can pay people out," because he would forget to pay people all the time. When the problem of him making late payments kept coming up, I was like, okay, clearly you are not capable of paying people on time, so I need to have access to the money that we're making so that I can do it. And he really didn't like when I would say things like that. He would cry about how he was investing so much of his own money into this and how I had no idea how hard it was and how it had to be in his bank account because he was investing so much of his personal money that it wouldn't have made sense unless it was whatever. He would just give me all these excuses and would cry and get mad at me and then would pay the people that I was upset at him for not paying, and then would send me a couple $100s to shut me up. And this would be a constant cycle.
I'm trying not to be shady, but I'm just gonna be real. And when we get on my Zoom, when I get on my Zoom, this is when I'm real. That excerpt is the most he talks about the allegations in the 51-minute video. I did find it to be a bit off-putting and self-indulgent and a bit self-congratulatory.
There's a formula for throwing a T-Boy wrestling event, which I will give the internet, so you guys can all throw your own wrestling events if you'd like. There's just so many moving parts of a show like this. It's hard to even imagine unless you throw one. There's a lot of stuff that you need to think about and you need to plan. Just some ridiculous shit too, that I cooked 400 hot dogs in my studio apartment. Why? Why did I do that? And we also, Mish and I, were trying to figure out what to wear. So I was like, wait, let's be a real coach at a real sporting event and wear a suit. And he was like, yeah, let's wear matching black suits. And people talking about it so much. Yeah, you can't fake that.
And that's not me saying I feel like Adam has nothing to be proud of or nothing that should be celebrated. He did build this obviously incredibly meaningful space. And I'll give him grace that I'm sure he's going to address more, considering it's a 3-part series. I just felt like he really didn't take much accountability or apologize or really address the issue. It's more like a genuine telling of almost how to throw a T-Boy wrestling, which I have mixed feelings about, considering.
So what do we make of this? This situation is devastating and complicated and sad and shocking because, in my view, it's 2 stories. On one hand, this is some real life, real world shit. This is taking out a mortgage on a house. This is people being late on rent. This is debilitating injuries. This is allegedly fraud. But also, when you throw the word community on it, when this is about praxis and representation and visibility, and I'm speaking somewhat to what Marley was saying about language and what a lot of the participants spoke about in terms of what the event represented, there is a sort of oxymoronic, contradictory element to a for-profit queer community event. I'm not condemning it or events like it on that ground. You can make a similar critique about my YouTube channel, to be fair. And that is a relatively fair criticism I got from people close to the story and genuinely had to unpack for myself. And it's a dialogue I want to continue to have as I report on stories like this. Because to profit off of queerness, to profit off of the idea of community, to profit off of our lack of representation is inherently a slippery slope. I think in many ways, it can be net positive, as I hope a lot of you feel this video is educational, informative, and in good faith, similarly to how T-Boy Wrestling was entertaining, liberating, and in good faith. But that line exists, and I think it takes a very cognizant person to understand how to walk that line, how to be almost ethical under this system, but also survive it. God, I'm a martyr. Especially considering, yeah, in this community, we use a lot of words. We hold each other to a high standard of ethics. And in being queer in New York and talking to other organizers, this is not uncommon. It is very easy for things like this to fall apart due to power and social dynamics, financial literacy, organizational skills. And this is not at all in defense of Mish. Clearly, my brother has some shit to work through, and I hope he does that work. But it's even noted in the document that people were asking about ways for Mish to be reintegrated into the community, as not to be punitive or carceral towards him, because at the end of the day, community. Which I think says a lot about the people involved. Because what does it mean to ostracize, to excommunicate? What does that do? To which the answer was, well, we can't really talk about that until he, actually apologizes, takes accountability, and someone can get in contact with him. And that's fair. That's super fair. But I mean this more so in the sense of actually taking this as a cautionary tale. Not pointing at Mish and going, bad seed, boo, tomato, tomato, but as a symbol of what ego, entitlement, and toxic masculinity can manifest into even in spaces that claim to be challenging or disrupting those harmful systems. This is about thinking about what an inclusive space really means, thinking about how we grow from things like this, thinking about even what we as a community do when faced with people like Mish. And I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing out essay prompts for real. Sound off down below. Especially considering it was noted in some of my interviews and in the comments of my last video that some of these venues were not wheelchair accessible, masking wasn't encouraged, an ASL interpreter allegedly wasn't fluent, thus the disabled queer community wasn't prioritized. Then there's this essence of lookism that's tinted with whiteness, upholding a certain beauty standard within the community. It's a whole bunch of incredibly pertinent issues born out of a society that doesn't really fuck with us, that we all need to unpack and investigate within ourselves and in our spaces, but at the same time, we are also, as queer people, not super societally optimized to, have the time to do all that work all the time. We broke. We getting hate crimed. There's been an ongoing debate about fucking bathrooms going on in dominant culture for the past 4 years. Stuff like this exposes that cultural line, that complex tension, that hierarchy of privilege, those blind spots. But nonetheless, these spaces are necessary. They are integral to beginning that work. Especially the flops. We need flops. Flops are lessons. Flop once, so thus we may never flop again, brother. And whether that work is about financial literacy or accessibility or earnest community or masculinity or whatever, these spaces matter. And despite how all of this turned out, T-Boy Wrestling really fucking mattered.
I can't tell you how many times I'm I think about T-Boy Wrestling and I get emotional and I get mad because I was dude, this meant so much to me. This meant so much to so many people. 2025 was the year that we kind of did the T-Boy Wrestling tour. It was the first time in my life I'd ever got to travel. The opportunity to get to do that with my fellow my trans brothers that I were able to make through T-Boy Wrestling that. It was so magical to me. When we traveled, we had Airbnbs, for all of the out of town wrestlers. It felt it was such a deep sense of bonding, being in a house and waking up and being I'm in a house with a bunch of other trans people, trans masculine people, and I was I don't have to wake up and immediately put on a binder to feel comfortable in my home. I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. I don't have to immediately start masking and being over presenting, because especially in a lot of masculine spaces, like it can just be really difficult to exist, you know? And it just felt so freeing to be around so many other people like me.
T-Boy Wrestling, T4T Wrestling, TDLA, like, did tap into something that our community needed, right? And I feel like there was, I don't know what exactly about wrestling is so cathartic to people, but I think watching trans people dogfight each other just like kind of heals something in you a little bit. And you know, I would want to see you know, queer people in their own communities like putting on their own shows.
And I really do miss it. I miss just being able to get together with other trans people, and there's just like a solidarity there, because it is such a small community. And it went from being like a local city Los Angeles thing to being the entire state to being international in the matter of a year. I think you mentioned this too, that at some point, like Mish and Adam like said that they consider T-Boy Wrestling like their art piece. And if there's anything I want to say to people to like kind of give them hope, it would be that when anyone makes art and like shares it with the world, it's no longer just that artist's piece anymore. It belongs to the community. And I think we get to decide what to make of it once it's out there. So now we know like how powerful T-Boy Wrestling was. And I think it would be a shame for it to just disappear into obscurity and be forever tainted by a selfish person, frankly. Because at the end of the day, like they facilitated it, but we showed up. Like the community showed up. And we made T-Boy Wrestling what it was. We showed up with the performances, we showed up to the practices, and we showed up and put on a show. The coaches came and trained us and taught us how to perform and taught us how to be creative with our bodies and with our ideas. And there are so many performances that are unforgettable. I'm like, Mish didn't do that. We did that. And if T-Boy Wrestling was an art piece, we were the art. And I want people to remember that we were what made T-Boy Wrestling. The wrestlers who applied, the team behind them were what made T-Boy Wrestling. And so I hope that once we like continue to like heal and be able to talk about it, that we can bring it back in some form, because it was just it's such a phenomenal idea, and I think we need it.
I hope people walk away from this with reflection, with empathy, and with hope. I want to thank everyone who was open and vulnerable enough to share their stories with me. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope this video brings some semblance of closure. But I also know Salem is releasing his own piece about T-Boy Wrestling as someone close to the situation, so be sure to check that out. Marley's going on tour. She's on tour right now. Just follow everyone. I'll link them all below. Show them some support and some love. And at the end of the day, stay gay. And don't do embezzlement. White collar crime is so out in 2026. Bye!